Call the May 12th, 2020 special meeting is ZBA Planning and Zoning to order. Seated tonight are 5 regular members. Myself, David Rathman, Gardner Young, Ben Philbrick, Lynn Conway, Fred Dykeman. Also here is Peter Shumowitz. Rick Sheehan is Ryan on?
Yes, Ryan's on.
And Ryan DC. Minutes of the previous meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve. This is Ben Philbrick.
Second, Fred Dykeman.
Any discussion?
They look good. They look good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Next order of business is the public hearing. Ben, it's up your turn.
Okay. Pursuant to the general statutes of the state of Connecticut, revision of 1958, and all amendments thereto, and pursuant to the zoning regulations of the town of Stonington, Connecticut, Planning and Zoning Commission hereby gives notice. They will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, May 12th, 2020 at 7 p.m. by virtual meeting on the following application. PZ 1930 SUP and CAM AG Trust LLC, Comeau. Special use permit and coastal area management review applications for modifications to approved applications for a 10,000 plus or minus square foot building. Modifications include addition of dormers, change to proposed building uses, medical and wellness, and an on-site ISDS. Property located at Harry Austin Drive and Masons Island Road, Mystic. Assessors map 160, block 4, lot 4, zone M-1. Continued from 3/17/20.
The way the public hearing works, first we'll hear from the applicant and then anyone in favor of the application. Then we'll hear from those opposed to the application. And then we'll have anyone just trying to have general comments on the application. And at the end, we'll hear from the town planner on the application. Mark, are you all here?
On mute.
There it is.
Mr. Rathman, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
We're getting a little bit of feedback. I want to go through a different.
For those on the phone, you may want to mute your mics while other people are talking. That will help with any background noise.
Yeah, is anyone else getting any feedback? I think it's gone now. Great. Okay. Thank you. Mark Comeau is present on project. Sorry, I'm still getting a little bit of. Someone's dialing in now. Keith, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of. I'm getting people dialing in on my end. I don't know. Can you guys hear that as well?
Yeah, I'm muting people as I can.
Keith, this is Lynn. You can mute everyone but one person.
Yeah.
And we're under AG Trust Mystic Landing. We're all together.
Okay.
I think we might be okay now.
Yeah, sounds good now.
Okay. If it pleases the chair, I'll get started. My name's Sergio Terenzia. I'm the engineer for the project. I'm with Trenzia and Associates. The site plans that were prepared and presented to you in this application were prepared by my office under my responsible charge. Our offices are located at 99 Mechanic Street in Pawtucket. With Trenzia and Associates, I am the president and the principal of that company. And I am a licensed engineer, professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, just for the record. With me tonight, I have my client, Cody Georgiadis, the project and property owner and applicant, Mark Comeau, project architect, Paul Garrity, who's the project attorney, and one of my associates, Sarah Brittner, who's going to be helping me with presentation tonight. We'll be presenting our screen, and I'll be speaking to it as we go through. And if there's any questions, I'm assuming we'll hold off as each one of us get through our presentation, if that pleases the board, the commission. So with that, we'll start presenting our screen, and I hope that everyone should be able to see it. Mark, can you see it on your end? Coming up. Great. I believe most of you probably already read the staff report, but very briefly, the property located on the corner of Masons Island Road and Harry Austin Drive is the subject of this application. It has had a pretty long history of permitting with local permitting through special use permit, inland wetlands, as well as, I believe, a Superior Court decision associated with this property and its history. The site as it sits now is a vacant lot. It's been cleared in the past and is located just in front of the YMCA and the old Color Lab lots. Sarah, if you could zoom out a little bit, just give a little more context. And as most of you are familiar, the Mystic YMCA or the Knight family YMCA. That's okay. We can just leave it there. There we go. The Mystic. Sorry about that. The Mystic YMCA to the east, and the Color Lab property, subject to another application that's been and permit that's been before you, and the past for a residential development. The site as it is now is as I mentioned, is a cleared lot. Currently, everything grades in the direction of Harry Austin Drive towards Masons Island Road and Harry Austin Drive is caught in an existing drainage system and discharges across Harry Austin Drive. Sarah, can you zoom in a little bit more in that area? Into a wetland complex just south of those, pretty much where the tennis courts are in the parking lot area. The site's located in a zone X, which is an area of minimal flooding. There are wetlands located, as I mentioned, to the south and southwest of Harry Austin Drive. I will note that we did obtain an inland wetlands permit prior to coming to the commission here, and we're in front of you this evening for a coastal area management approval, as well as an update to our special use permit. I figured that it would be best to start with the history of what was previously approved to give you a little context into what we're proposing. So I would like to start with the approved plan. This is not our proposed plan. This is the one that was previously approved. And there are some things that staff has brought up which we have addressed. We've gone through a lengthy comment period, that was extended because of COVID-19. And we're here tonight we can go over some of the improvements that we've made. The first thing I'll point out is that in the northeastern portion of the property, Sarah zooms in there, You'll note that there is a retaining wall that was required and approved. And you can see top of wall was at 17.5, bottom of wall was at elevation 10. Identifying that there was a 7.5-foot wall at its highest along that property line that was previously approved. The other thing I'll point out is that there's a drainage discharge in the corner of the property that directly directs discharge, stormwater discharge, albeit it'd be overflow from the drainage system onto the adjacent parcel. Sorry, if you'll zoom back out. A few other things I want to note about this plan is that you see there's a lot of drainage, underground drainage in different areas. All the rectangular and square areas, those are all underground drainage features. It's important to note that because when we move to our proposed plan, you will see that we've consolidated and I think have made significant improvements on the stormwater management for the site. Furthermore, in front of the building, there was some low points where the previous plan was catching, you can see CB4 and CB5. Those are areas that we were catching stormwater in front of the building, which was not an ideal place to be consolidating water right in front of a building. And just something to note on that. And then if you go to the left side, there's another catch basin existing that we were utilizing for an overflow, but also was catching some of the stormwater coming off of the site, which included some of the paved area in that vicinity that was not reaching any of the treatment areas and for the water quality and the water quantity. So I wanted to start with this plan and also point out that the grading on this plan was a little erratic. There's a lot of steep areas, upwards of 8% along here, and I think the impetus of that was they were trying to meet the grade at Masons Island Road. As many of you know, that's much higher, or relatively higher than the site itself. The site kind of grades down as you go along Harry Austin Drive, which was a lot of the challenge in making the grading on this site work. All of this stuff likely would have been picked up at final plan review by the town engineer. But when we first looked at this project, we went back to the old plan and said, what are the things that we need to change and that can hopefully be improvements to the site? So with that, I wanted to bring you to the new building. Generally in the same location, but I'm going to walk you through some of the changes that we made, which we feel are improvements to the site for constructability and cost effectiveness, and just general overall just site improvements. Just for the record, the project is for the construction of a 4,250 square foot, 3-story structure, 4,250 square feet in footprint. The proposed building as now is a mix of medical clinic, office space, and general office space with some common elements in foyer areas. What we have done on this site, generally the layout is the same. We're still coming in the same general area on Harry Austin Drive. The vehicles can come across the front of the building where there's parking available. There's also parking available to the northeast. The drive goes all the way around the building, and you can and it's all two-way traffic with the exception of around the back where where it's only one-way traffic. I wanted to point out that we now have a septic system on this site. That's one of the material changes that had to be made because of we received a hardship from the Water Pollution Control Authority because if we had to tie in a sewer line, we would have to extend over 500 feet of additional sewer line to get it to a point where it could discharge to the municipal system. In addition to that, the town currently has a moratorium, which we're not exactly sure when will be lifted. I've been told sometime next year, but sometime early next year, but we would like to get construction started and needed to plan to be able that we can discharge wastewater on the site. So as such, we applied for a Electrolyte Health District permit for a septic system, which has been approved for the mix of medical facility and the office facility. The septic system is just to the, Sarah, could you just kind of highlight it? Septic system is, field is in the front there near the driveway access. I will point out that there was a drainage line that runs through there, an existing drainage line, a gray dash line. And that line is going to have to be relocated. And we've spoken to the planning department and the town on that. And it's basically just a relocation of that line to make sure we observe minimum setbacks. And it'll allow the town drainage to flow at the same quantity and rate as it did before. We're just mimicking it, just relocating it. And once again, because we needed to get the septic system on the site, and this was the ideal location. One improvement that I will cite with this is that we've consolidated the drainage system into one area. It makes maintenance and construction much easier. All the treatment, all the pre-treatment is within this one field. We have isolated, what are known as isolator rows that handle the heavy sediments that can be cleaned out into a manhole. And then all of the water quality, quantity, everything's treated in this one system from the entire site. We picked it up in catch basins, routed it to this system, and then it overflows no longer to the adjacent parcel. It overflows into a drainage line that then goes and discharges to the adjacent wetlands across Harry Austin Drive. And once again, this has been approved. We've gone to a meeting for the town with the Inland Wetlands Commission, and this has been reviewed and approved by the reviewing engineer and the Wetlands Commission. The next thing I wanted to highlight is that I identified that there were some walls that were required on the previous plan. Some of the grading, I think, on that previous plan also would have necessitated walls. So what we have done, and we're fully aware of the town's interpretation or staff interpretation on the use of walls within setbacks. What we have done to give the best presentation that we can is along the northwest and northeast property lines adjacent to the Color Lab property. We have kept all of those walls to a maximum of 3 feet, which fall under the ornamental retaining wall criteria, which your staff has interpreted as being allowed to be within a setback. So we've also been working with the property owners adjacent to us to make sure that we can keep that wall at 3 feet, and that wall is going to be attractive because it's going to be retaining our site, and that they're going to be looking at it with a decorative fence on top, which we've been working back and forth with their engineer and their owner's rep to make sure that we have a mutual agreement on what that wall is going to be and what it's going to look like along with the decorative fence on top. So that was one of the things that staff brought up. They were concerned about that wall. One wall that we could not eliminate and allowed us to keep a 3-foot wall on the back and side is the wall along Mason's Island Road. And that wall, I think, at its tallest is around 7 feet. Although that it's in a setback, Mr. Garrity is going to go into some interpretation that may allow this commission to make a decision on this tonight and allow us to put this wall here. But one of the conditions of your previous approval was which was aptly brought up by your planner, Mr. Brines, is that we wanted to block any obtrusive vehicles and their headlights from the neighboring properties across the street. Sarah, could you bring up the GIS again, please? So you'll notice on the GIS there are some residences on the easterly side of Mason's Island Road, particularly the one that's right across, no, just north. Those folks right there. Our wall would be directly adjacent to that house. Now, if you can go back to the site plan, and Mark Comeau is going to get into some renderings a little bit later in the presentation that'll further accentuate what I'm trying to explain. But basically, if you can visualize in your mind's eye that this wall is actually retaining Mason's Island Road, the site recesses behind that wall. Therefore, this wall is not going to be obtrusive to anyone's view. It actually is going to have the opposite effect, and it's going to block anyone's view from seeing parking, seeing the vehicles behind that wall, and to block any lights that may have shined over across Mason's Island Road in one of the previous plans. So, albeit that there may be a technicality that we need to overcome this evening, we think that this is a superior design in actually protecting the neighbors and is not obtrusive to them. With that, I think I've hit the high points of my presentation, going over wastewater. We will have a water line, adequate water service to the property, drainage. We haven't received any further staff comment from any other departments, essentially because this has been an approved project in the past, and I think we're showing and putting our best foot forward that we'll be improving it. With that, unless there's any questions, I was going to move the presentation over to Mr. Garrity so that he could address some of the more of the regulatory technical questions.
Question here.
Yes.
Those of us who live out on the island understand that there's a sewer line in Mason's Island Road. Why did you not connect into that?
Yeah, I don't believe there is a sewer line in Mason's Island Road.
Yes, it runs out to the condominiums on the northeast end of the island.
That's a private line. We wouldn't be able to tie into that without someone else's permission. By phosphorus.
I have a question.
Yes.
Peter Chomowitz. On your site plan, you've got the top of the wall elevation at 24 feet. What's the elevation of Mason's Island Road?
Could you zoom into that, sir? There's a catch basin out in Mason's Island Road. I believe the top of frame is about 24.2. I think the highest that road goes might be around 25, maybe 26.
So in other words, the top of the wall is pretty much at the same level as the road.
That is correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ben Philbrick. I have a question. So the septic system will be underneath the driveway?
A portion of it, yes. Actually, I think, yeah, it'll be completely under the driveway, correct.
Thank you.
It'll be rated for the, it's a type of system that is rated for traffic and is allowed to be underneath the pavement.
For fire trucks and, I mean, heavy weight, obviously?
It's an H20 rated system, so yes, it can take heavy trucks as well.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Lynn Conway. I was wondering about this private sewer line. Did you pursue that at all as to whether you could hook up through that line?
Yeah, this is Paul Garrity with the attorney. Yes, we did. We had numerous discussions with the owners of the line and got absolutely nowhere with them. Because frankly, from a cost perspective, it would have been a lot cheaper for my client to be able to tie into that, but they weren't willing to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Are there any further questions before Mr. Garrity continues on with the presentation? Right, hearing none, then I will begin. I essentially have only 4 points to raise, and primarily 2 of them are related, and that gets to the retaining wall. I understand staff's interpretation that anything over 3 feet is considered a structure and can't be in the setback. I would disagree that that's an appropriate interpretation, in part because in the section which defines the structure, there is no distinction between 3 feet or any level above that. And from a legal perspective, I think that creates a vague scenario in terms of its enforcement that's otherwise subject to constitutional challenge. That said, in section 2.13.2.3 of your own regulations, it does say that retaining walls may be built within 6 feet of the property line. So to me, that is telling me that this type of proposed retaining wall is permissible within a setback, and it's not something that would ultimately be excluded. Which brings me to my second point, which is, what's the purpose of a setback? Generally, the purpose of a setback is to provide abutters with some room, whether it's for view or space requirements, largely aesthetic, so that they don't have a structure right on their property that might impact both the aesthetic value and the actual monetary value of a property. In this particular case, as Sergio pointed out, this is located below grade. It solves a previous problem from the prior approved proposal, which is headlights from traffic in the building parking lot shining into property not across the street. I mean, that's not at a butter, but across the street. And because there's a town road in between, the property on the northeast side of Mason's Island Road is not deemed an abutter. But this solves any particular problem like that, and it's below grade, so those properties over there, they don't have an obstructed view because the building is essentially lowered. So the view that they have today will be the view that they have tomorrow, looking out at a building, which from looking at the renderings that Mark has done is an attractive addition to the area. The other issue, the third one, is the retaining walls next to our abutters, which we're keeping at 3 feet, so they would be below whatever staff's interpretation is. But we have worked with the abutters. We have a general agreement as to both the design, some additional improvements if they want them, that they've agreed that they would pay for, and we're generally agreeable on, to the extent during construction there are access needs by either side, we will be able to work through whatever those needs are so that we don't interfere with either one's construction or construction schedule. So I think, you know, before I hit the fourth point, I just want to go back to the retaining wall. I know staff has interpreted that way, but I would take exception to that interpretation, again, because it's not spelled out in your regulations. So it leaves it to essentially an arbitrary and capricious application. I'm not suggesting that staff is doing that here, because Keith has also pointed out on page 15 of his memo that that interpretation has created problems and severely limited the ability of property owners to develop their lots. So I think he's putting that ball in your court to make a reasonable decision, and I think the reasonable decision here is to look at section 213.2.3 and realize that you've considered this in the past in terms of designing your regulations so that you could put a retaining wall up to the property line. And frankly, from a design standard, and I'm not a designer, but I've done enough planning and zoning work over the years, that makes absolute sense, because you have to move the retaining wall 50 feet out. You're losing a huge chunk of your property to an inability to develop it. So I would submit to the commission that the design is appropriate and that they should apply 2-13.23 in this particular case and allow the wall to be constructed as proposed. Finally, and I appreciate, as does my client and the rest of the team here, staff's concerted effort in light of all the circumstances and the shutdowns that we've had to work on this application remotely and keep in touch with us and get this done.
we were hoping, as I have with many clients right now, to have been at hearings in March and April to move projects forward, but we understand, obviously, this is no fault of anybody's, and we appreciate the commission, stepping up to the plate and getting on board with WebEx and like that. Where I'm going with this is we have a number of financing contingencies that we're working on. Some of those are very time sensitive, and because of delays, we are getting very tight with the deadlines, and any little hiccup could upset the financing, the ability to get the financing and close on those transactions. So to the extent that the commission can render a decision tonight, we would greatly appreciate that, because we're juggling a lot of balls right now, and each one has to stay in the air as long as possible. But in order for us to get this deal, which we think is a great addition to the town, moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark? So with that, Mr. Chair, we were going to move it over to the architectural portion of the presentation to look at the beautiful building that Mark Comeau has designed for this site. So we're going to switch over he's going to switch right over to presenting from his computer, and it will, I think we're...
So to start off with, on the screen, you're looking at a, am I muted there? Is that me?
No.
That's just you. Okay. Okay. You're looking at a design concept that I did in 2008 when the then owner of this property approached me to design a building here. And as a matter of fact, there was a local dentist who was in some planning and zoning interesting proceedings going on. Was looking for space, and so it was from the start. It was planned to be a medical, a mixed-use medical office structure, and so not. I'll spend 45 seconds on this, but not to bore you. With this lot, it's interesting because in the planning ground setting book, Rural by Design by Randall Arendt, he cites Andrus Duaney in breaking urban zones spread out to the suburban zones into sectors. And this part of Mystic is called the T4, where it's a fringe zone between the urban core, Central Hall and Bravo Bravo, and the residential zone. And according to good planning, we should make buildings that lend themselves to harmonizing the differences in masses within the architecture. So this concept that you're looking at, I tried to employ a medium mass that had yet more residential characteristic in its articulation to it, to kind of respect the residential neighborhood and, in my opinion, put a better foot forward than the very contemporary facade of the YMCA in that zone. And I would point out that all along, the building has never maximized its FAR, and it has never maximized its height, which is something most clients demand of us. And it was really good to be working on a project where the architecture was actually allowed to sort of lead the way on that. This is from that book that I mentioned, where we talk about the T5 urban center right here, which is really downtown Mystic. And then you get past Big Y and you're out here, if you can see my cursor. And we're in the T4 zone right here, which is where planners and architects should think about the medium massing. The design that was approved in 2014, you can see it's very close to the original design. There's the original, and there's the approved design. But we did have some enhancements to make to this, to the design with the new owner who wants to realize this project as the best it can be. This is the technical elevation of what the new design would look like. It's maintained most of its characteristics. There's undulation within the facade, some push and some pull, articulating gables to break down the mass. So it's a medium mass, but it's got residential scale to it, and that residential scale is supported by banding lines, residential style windows, and the cupola that you see is masking the code required elevator. This is the 3D rendering of what the structure would look like. And I want to point out this is taken from a vantage point of Mason's Island Road, and you can see how the red car, the gray car, and the whitish car are mostly masked because they would be on the other side of that retaining wall that Sergio was referring to, where we have an elevation drop there. And then the building articulates itself with a lot of movement on the facade, with the use of the portico, and the roof articulation, as you can see. That color palette that you see is the one that was originally conceived by me in the concept you saw from 2008. And for color design purposes, this was another three-dimensional iteration of what the building would look like from Mason's Island Road. And that's the more technical color drawing that we're envisioning. So I'll keep it short, and I'll open up to your questions if you have any for me.
Yeah, I not the building, but I noticed that on landscaping, are you doing the landscaping? There were a lot more trees on the original plan. What happened?
So, yeah, so to answer that question, we turned off the layer of most of the trees because they would have blocked the building. There is a vast landscape plan designed by our landscape architect, but we did shut many of them off because they masked what it was we were trying to get across with the rendering, if that makes sense.
Can we see that before we're finished?
Yep, yes,
I think you might have switched. Are you on mute now, Mark, or are you still on?
I'm still on.
Yeah. So I'm going to unmute mine.
Okay, I'll mute.
Great. Can you turn off your...
Yeah, I'm muted.
You're speaking.
Yeah. So this is Sergio again. The landscape plan, I believe, I think should be being shared if everyone can see that. Sarah, can you zoom in a little bit? To Mr. Rathman's to Mr. Rathman's point, that we still are meeting the requirements for all the trees, the perimeter trees and the internal landscaping trees. We worked with landscape architect Bob Deletta, and he was the original landscape architect on the plan. So we kept that consistency as we moved through and utilized his expertise on this. And we were able to get a lot of, there's still a lot of tree screening that's going to be taking place around the perimeter of the property, especially along Mason's Island Road. And the areas where the wall won't be blocking the lights, you can see that there's a lot of low shrubbery in this, I guess the south, that's the southern portion, yeah, near the entrance in that area. That's going to be pretty densely vegetated to stop any other penetrating headlights, and it will also screen any vehicles there. In addition to that, that grade still comes up slightly, a foot or two from to get to Mason's Island Road. And as you go up Mason's Island Road, as many of you know, the grade just keeps increasing, and that necessitates the wall that we've been discussing.
What's the material of the wall going to look like, this retaining wall?
I think Mark and I will bounce back and forth if we have any other questions.
Yeah, what's the retaining wall going to look like? What's it made of?
The final materials haven't been decided yet, but we can guarantee that it'll be an attractive and a very nice finish to it. But the walls won't be seen from Mason's Island Road. They'll only be seen from Harry Austin Drive and from the building itself. But we're not gonna. My client has indicated he's not gonna spare any expense on this, and they'll be very attractive.
This is Lynn. I have a few questions. So about the retaining wall, can you go back to the picture that Mark had up? Thanks. So is there any kind of safety concern here that somebody could fall? Oh, you know, fall, from the 7-foot drop? I'm saying that because, children ride their bikes, people jog, there's races going on in that area. Sometimes it's congested with, people cheering people on. I'm just not getting, I just wonder if that has been a consideration, whether somebody could inadvertently step off and, oh, I see. Okay, I didn't see that part. Okay. Boy, that's too bad, huh? Okay, let me ask you another question. How about the lighting in the parking lot? How does that work?
Yeah, this is Sergio again. We've done a full photometric plan. So we can actually, I think Sarah can bring up the lighting plan that was submitted in the package. Basically, I know this is a kind of a muddled drawing, but if Sarah's able to zoom into it, let me see if it'll come up here. I think Mark, you're still sharing. Okay, I think it's switching over. Okay, so the drawing that's in front of you now, you can see there's a lot of little numbers, and the blue symbols are the different types of lighting that we have. You can see it's going to be relatively minimal. We got four light posts in the parking lot, and then the rest of the site is going to have building lights lights mounted to the building. So that being the case, all the light is full cutoff, dark sky compliant. You can see all the zeros and point ones along Masons Island Road and Harry Austin Drive, as well as the adjacent parcel. All the lighting is designed to shine only in the areas where they are required for safety and for security. So those lights will remain on as needed for just security purposes. I know that the town is very sensitive to having lights on overnight and extended periods of time. If necessary, they'll be put on photometric photovoltaic timers or just go on periodically during the night just for safety. But this office is going to have very standard hours. For the most part, I don't anticipate that you're going to see these lights on, late into the night or early in the morning to disturb any of the neighbors. Plus, the lights will be limited just to the site itself.
So Sergio, just to make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly, every time I see a 0, that means that there's no light from the various lighting, either coming from the building or the 4 lampposts in the parking lot. Is that correct? So the outer perimeter seems to say 0.0, 0.0. You see, like in the lower left-hand corner where it says something of Mystic. You see how it's all zeros there? Does that mean there's no light shining from the parking lot or the building? What do the zeros mean, Sergio?
So the zeros mean that there's essentially no light shed going into those areas. But I will point out, which is not apparent from this drawing, but is on our other, that Harry Austin Drive does have its own streetlights. Is it on there?
Yes.
I'm sorry, it is on there. Yeah, down at you got to point at it on the computer, Sarah. But there's a light pole at the corner of Harry Austin Drive and Masons Island, and those continue down through the YMCA, and so there is lighting to keep that road safe. We're just going to be lighting the site to keep the parking lot and the building safe.
Okay, so let me just pursue this a little bit longer if I could. From Masons Island Road, will the light posts be seen? The top of the light posts? How tall are the light posts?
Plan. I'm gonna have to take a look and see how tall those poles are.
Okay, and then the lights that are coming off the building, are they on the third floor? Are they, how's that working? They coming from the third floor, from the peak of the roof, from the second floor? Where are they?
Okay, I'm back in, and I'm going to try to get back to where I was. Okay. Oops. I was just up.
You're up.
I'm up?
I can see over here.
Oh, okay. So you can see on the columns that support the portico, there's a light. I don't know if you can see my cursor. There's a light right here. There's a light right here. There's a light right here. It's all low-level lighting. There are no upper-level lights on the building.
Okay, thanks, Mark. That answered my question.
Okay, yep, you're welcome.
So I have another question. The balconies on the right-hand side of the building, as you know, as I'm looking at it on the side. Yeah, if you could put the next picture up right there. What's going on that third floor? Is there some kind of railing or something that cannot be seen? What's going on there?
Oh yeah, there's a railing up here. Yes, and you've noticed. Let me go back to our other ones here. That railing in the modeling ended up 11 feet off, and it should be up here.
Oh,
Ah, okay. So it's not as if it's two balconies or something like that. Okay.
That's
All right.
correct. Yep. Yep.
And I'm really hoping that fence is not white as it looks like it is in the picture, Mark.
Yeah.
Hoping you can
We think
see
black
that.
would be better. Yeah, we think if it's black,
Yeah,
it'll
invisible.
just die away. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
any other questions at this time? Well, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah, stop here and we'll see. Anyone else like to speak in favor of this application?
So, Mr. Chairman, what I'm going to try to do is share my screen here to show people how to raise their hands. Because this is going to be awkward. This is our first public hearing, trying to have people speak in an orderly way here, but we'll give it a shot.
Do we have anyone who would like to speak?
Yes, my name is Mark Ginsberg. I'm a resident of Stonington, 108 Montauk Avenue in Stonington, and I'm also a member of the board of the YMCA. And we are very, very proud, as we think the community is, of the YMCA project, and we're particularly pleased that the property is going to be developed so tastefully. We're also appreciative of the effort that has been taken to address drainage and runoff, as some of the water does run across Harry Austin onto our property, and we think that it's been professionally and ably dealt with. The Y also has an interest in this project, as it holds an easement on the property for a sign, which we think is very attractive and very important to the Y. And very important to the Y as well is, as the property gets developed, is that that signage remains, and it appears from the renderings and the plans that care has been taken to protect and preserve our signage, which we find very, very helpful. But all in all, we think it will be a great addition to the neighborhood. And despite Mark Comeau's concern about the contemporary appearance of the Y, we think that they blend well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Hearing none. Anyone like to speak in opposition?
Hello,
Hello?
this is Tiffany Wyman.
You're on, Tiffany.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I actually am a neighbor. I live across the street on the corner of Harry Austin and Masons Island Road. There's a few things that I am concerned about. So I'm questioning. I believe that the driveway is being moved in this new proposal. So if the driveway is being moved closer to Masons Island Road, I'm curious about what kind of impact that's going to have on the traffic, because the traffic on this road is obviously changing quite rapidly. So that's one question. The second question I have is the original drainage, I believe, that was set up on that piece of property was done so that there could be quite a bit of surface that drained water. So there was a lot of grass, there were plantings, there were all sorts of things like that. So I'm curious how much more asphalt will be on that piece of property. Yeah, it was all underground drainage and storage for water so that there could be more grass on the property. I'm also concerned with the 7-foot wall and the multiple comments that have been said about how what a wonderful addition to the neighborhood this will be. Of course, no one that has made those comments actually lives in this neighborhood, so I find that kind of interesting as well. I do have to say that that fence along Masons Island Road is not what I would consider attractive or adding value to the neighborhood. And I don't know how you can determine how beautiful products are going to be when they haven't been selected yet. So whether these retaining walls are going to be just concrete blocks or whatever kind of structures they are. And I also don't like the idea of this getting pushed through because of people being concerned about finances. We have concerns as our property values get affected. So I really have a problem with this getting pushed right through to meet people who are coming into the neighborhood's objectives and not caring about people who have already invested in this neighborhood.
Thank you, Tiffany. The applicant will answer your question to rebuttal, I hope. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Any general comments on this application? Hearing none.
And just a note, just to not forget to unmute your microphone if you are looking to speak.
Does anyone else like to speak on this application? All right. The applicant for rebuttal, please.
Sorry about that. Mr. Rathman, we will, if I may, once again, Sergio Terenzia for the applicant. If it pleases the commission, we'll address Tiffany's concerns as the neighbor. I'll start off with, as part of my presentation, and we started with the original plan. One of the things that she was concerned with was drainage. I think I made it relatively clear, maybe not, that the previous plan had all underground drainage, and we are mimicking that to the fullest extent. We've actually, I believe, we've have the same amount of impervious area as the previous site had, and it's actually less. We've increased some of the buffer along the backside of the property in working with the color lab, the people that own the color lab. Something that we worked together to make sure we could get a little bit more green space there, pulled that curving back and that pavement back to minimize it. And we also did that along the front, and I think the landscaping plan, I know we flashed it up a little bit earlier, can show that again. My client has spared no expense in making sure that it's landscaped properly, and will do so with respect to any fences and walls that are put on this site. They'll be attractive and have really nice finishes. And actually, the wall can't be seen from the adjacent property unless you go down Harry Austin Drive and view it from the YMCA side or the Color Lab side. With respect to traffic, the access is in the same location. Any adjustment to it is minor, if that, from the previously approved plan. We have also gone through a thorough vetting process. This isn't being rushed through. This has been gone through 2 rounds of comments with the staff engineer since the town engineer left, through your peer engineering review from another company. We provided a site lighting, a site distance for the traffic, so that to prove that people coming out of this driveway have the appropriate sighting distance so that they can see the oncoming traffic. This building is not going to create any more traffic than the previously approved plan. We've thoroughly gone through traffic evaluation, and it's no more intense than the previous proposal. So with that, I think we've accommodated additional green space. Like I said, we're going to have an attractive project with fences and walls, and we've more than accommodated the drainage. I think we've made a significant improvement to make sure that we do have the appropriate amount of green space on this site, especially along Mason's Island Road, because that is we were really focused on making sure that area remained an attractive and nicely landscaped looking area, along with the YMCA wall. To Mr. Ginsburg's concern, that signage is still going to stay there and still have a green space, same as it always had as you approach from Mason's Island Road into Harry Austin. So I believe that unless any of my colleagues here have any other response to that, I think that covers most of the concerns.
Thank you, Sergio.
Sergio, this is Lynn. Lynn Conway, can I ask you a couple of follow-up questions along the same line as the comments from Tiffany? Can you just specify the width of the green space on top of the wall on Mason's Island Road? Are we talking 3 feet, 4 feet between, the fence and the sidewalk? Just to it's hard to see on the screen, and I'd like Tiffany to know how much space that is going to be green as you go down Mason's Island Road. But how wide is that strip of green?
Yeah, to answer your question, it varies. With the sidewalk, you're probably looking at close to 15 feet in some areas, and it'll go down to probably about 10 feet. Might have to get some exact measurements, but you're looking in that range. I think behind the sidewalk, we have anywhere from 5 to 10 feet of green space, which is what was required to get the trees and the shrubbery that we needed along the sidewalk in that area. And the rendering doesn't really do it justice, as Mark Comeau pointed out. We took a lot of that greenery off of there because it's going to be blocking the view more or less to the building. once it's all in full bloom and full leaf out, and those trees mature. So the fence will be there for safety. It'll be decorative, but also there's going to be a significant amount of shrubbery and trees in that area to meet the local zoning code, which is going to make that a very attractive entrance into Mason's Island Road.
Yeah, okay, so it's 5 to 10 feet of some type of greenery. Okay, that's what I was looking for, just to put some perspective around it, Sergio. And then let me ask you just one other question that came up having to do with signage. So, you know, I didn't hear you mention that at all. I might have missed it. The signage for the YMCA is not being affected at all. Is there some kind of signage for this particular building that is not on the building itself anywhere?
Hit that mark. Thanks. Sorry, we got a couple of computers going here. The signage we are deferring to a future decision. We originally had proposed some signage that would either incorporate the sign with the YMCA or work around it. In order not to bog down this application, we really want to get to building the building, and we'll come back in whatever is the commission's pleasure, or if we can do it administratively, it would be even better if we're in conformance to get a sign permit that's going to be in concert with the existing sign that's there. As Mr. Ginsburg pointed out, there is an existing sign easement that we have to abide by, and there's conditions of such on the land records. And so we fully intend to comply with that. It's in your conditions of recommended stipulations that you acknowledge that there is a legal non-conforming sign for the YMCA that will remain. And we hope that we can maybe work with the Y if there's going to be any change to that sign, or it's going to remain and we'll work around it. So the long-winded answer is there is no sign proposal for this application at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one final question, and again, this is just to give more information to, you know, to the public. You said you haven't selected the material for the retaining wall as yet. Have you narrowed it down to like 2 or 3 things that you could tell everybody it's one of these? You know, just again, it's just an information pass because it's come up from the public.
Yes, yeah, we've worked with our clients, and just for the benefit of the commission and the public, that's a fair question. It'll be some kind of stone veneer. We're not going to use a typical. I don't know if you're familiar with an Allen block or a Versalock wall. I brought those up to my client, and he was adamant that would not be the type of material you'd be using. It's going to look very natural. It's going to be some kind of natural-looking stone veneer, not something that you're going to see like at a Walmart parking lot. Yeah, if you want to.
Or at the new housing development on Route 1.
On his screen. And as far as the fence go, we've talked about a nice, like a wrought iron type of fence, vertical fence. We tried to get that across in the rendering, but we didn't want it to take away from seeing beyond the building. So you're talking, we're not going to put up a chain link fence. It's not going to be a vinyl fence. It's going to be something that fits with the character of the area. Like I said, something like a wrought iron black fence.
This is Ben Philbrick. What would the height of that fence be, roughly?
The height of the fence would just be enough to meet code for safety reasons. So I believe minimum is 36, or is it 48? 42? I'm sorry, Mark's telling me it's 42 inches tall, just to meet code. So for safety purposes, we wouldn't want it to be an 8-foot or 6-foot wall fence. That's not what we're going for. Nor does my client want to, go through that expense. It's just going to be the minimal that we need and look really nice.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio.
a question, Sergio. This property backs up on the north side to the railroad tracks, correct?
I believe so.
Okay, and then how far down Mason's Island Road will this fence run? It doesn't go all the way to the corner of Harry Austin. Shouldn't need to, I wouldn't think.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that one time?
I'm questioning how far down the Mason's Island Road will that fence run? You know, you get down to grade, maybe halfway through the property there. It doesn't have to run all the way to the corner of Harry Austin.
No, the fence is only going to be on top of the wall to the extent where there's a fall that we need to mitigate the fall protection.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Keith? Keith, it's your
Yes.
turn.
Sure. Well, as was stated, back to the basics of the purpose of the application. A special use permit was required, basically because they're making the building a little larger with those shed dormers. It's the interior space that's really increasing and not the size of the exterior itself. And just the other changes to the site are what brought this back before you. One of the main things for you to decide is that wall issue that their attorney talked about. It has been our interpretation for the past couple of years that retaining walls over 3 feet tall can't be located in building setbacks. And it's spelled out in the report. You know, the purpose of that was to prevent some negative situations of large walls being right on someone's property lines, but there have been some negative consequences of that. In some zones, you have 50-foot setbacks. So to not be able to have a retaining wall of over 3 feet in up to 50 feet of setbacks can be pretty problematic when you're trying to develop a site. So to stray from that would just need your input. And if you say no to that, and if you say that a retaining wall of over 3 feet can't be in the setback, you know, it would force some major modifications to their plan here. Another thing we're looking for your interpretation on is where their loading zone is located. If you notice on their plan, the loading zone is leaves only a 12-foot drive aisle next to those spaces to the right of the building. The regulations are a little fuzzy about whether they can do that because you're supposed to have 24 feet of backup space for those parking spaces. From what the applicants are saying, you know, the loading zone won't be used all that frequently. They won't really have much tractor trailer sized deliveries as a medical office building. They're willing to have that be employee parking if need be, but that's just something where the commission would have to weigh in there.
Well, Keith, that was similar to when we just approved on Route 1, when they have just small delivery trucks coming. The fight.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
The
But
loading.
later on, if the purpose of this building changes, and if the loading zone was approved, the plan was approved as is, then does that kind of convey, regardless of what the purpose of the building may later be?
It would be stuck with that layout. And the other commercial building was smaller. It had less commercial space and was more of a financial office.
Right.
But if it changes use, it'd have to come back to us anyway.
Right, but at that point, the plan would have been set, et cetera, and, that's a change of use that's usually not something that somebody would go through. I mean, it would never probably even be presented to the commission as the fact that, we're not meeting. I mean, 12 feet versus 24 feet is only 50, it's 50%. It's big. It's not a minor reduction. Keith, my question to you also about the retaining wall, are we setting a precedent?
I think it would, especially because, we sort of took this interpretation upon ourselves to not allow the 3-foot walls within setbacks. So what the commission thinks does take precedence here. Now, we could have a regulation amendment in the future to clarify what we want out of retaining walls, but that would take time.
And have we asked our town attorney as to what their interpretation is of our regulations?
No, we haven't asked them about it.
I certainly think we should do that.
Can we make a distinction here? I mean, this is a retaining wall that is not at all visible to the neighbors. It's to keep essentially to keep Mason's Island Road in place, and so it doesn't fall into the parking lot. So that's different than putting a 12-foot wall down the property line that is visible to the neighbors. That's a distinction that I think is worth considering.
Yeah, I agree with you, Fred. I just don't want, another applicant to be able to quote what has been done here, right? So I'm thinking of the retaining walls that are being built in with the new housing on Route 1 past the high school, and those very, very tall, unattractive, viewed from Route 1 by everybody who passes it, retaining walls. So I just think that it's worth getting the town lawyer to give some comment as to if we approve this, are we setting some kind of precedent that the next time this comes along, we don't have to abide by our setbacks or anything else. But I see your point too. You can't see it from the street. I totally understand where you're coming from.
In my opinion, the town attorney would likely say that it's up to the commission to interpret its own regulations in a case like this.
Can we approve this without setting a precedent? In other words, can we approve this as a one-off without committing ourselves to the next retaining wall or that comes down the pike?
Well, I don't know how much we can, because every situation is different. I think we might have to, consider putting in a regulation amendment to say what we want in the regulations, which would take a few months, but in a sense, people do need guidance when they're developing sites like this as to what's allowed. And we do too,
Sure.
Because we could spend a whole night as to what we do want out of retaining walls and our regulations.
Keith, this is Chuck Sheehan. Can I ask you a question about where the interpretation ever came from that the staff did rely on? I mean, where in the regulations is the staff relying on that we have any purview over retaining walls and setbacks? Is it some definition of structure?
That's
where did that ever come from? Because the applicant in there, I'm sorry for rambling on here, and I'm not trying to walk over you talking, but the applicant presented some language that seemed fairly clear that this is at least ambiguous. That that they talk about retaining walls being allowed in certain cases within the setback in other areas of the regulation. So what was the staff relying on when they said that retaining walls weren't allowed within the setbacks?
Where we got that from is the definitions in zoning of structure and required yard. That's where it often comes down to with what's allowed in a setback. So they have a bunch of exemptions in there for things that can be allowed in a setback. One of them is ornamental retaining walls. Of course, there's no definition of that. And you need a building permit if you're building a retaining wall of over 3 feet. So that's how we settled on what's allowed in the setback based upon what height you need a building permit for the wall.
Keith, this is Paul Gary. Can I speak? I don't want to cut anybody off.
I'm finished. Thank you, Keith. That was very helpful. This is Chuck.
So if I can address two issues, I think it was Ms. Conway's issue regarding if there's a change of use. This is a special use permit, so we can't change the use from office and medical without commission approval. So that would be the commission's hook or control over the issue of the loading facility. Secondly, getting back to the retaining wall, as I read the section I quoted earlier, which is section 12, that allows us to build it up to within 6 inches of our property line. And one of the differences, I think.
Hey, is there someone that's not muted?
Let's see.
That's when you get the feedback.
Yeah.
I'll mute a few commission members here.
Thank you.
All right. All set?
Yes.
All right. What we're doing with this particular retaining wall is not holding back our property, but holding back the town's property, the town road, because the only way you could do it otherwise is to slope that out, which would then take up a substantial amount of our property. And I think the retaining wall that was being referred to earlier is one where it goes up to the public sidewalk, and it's holding back the owner's property as opposed to the situation we have here. But again, I would get back to looking at your own regulations and the interpretation of a structure. I think by saying we can't put this wall up when you have a separate regulation that says we can build a retaining wall within 6 inches of our boundary line is really a inconsistent interpretation on it. And I think in this case, as it's special permit, given the fact that we're holding back a town property or the town road in order to construct our parking lot, you can, I don't want to call it a one-off, but I think you can justify why you would make an exception if the commission thinks that the interpretation is appropriate. I happen to think that the interpretation is not appropriate. And as I said earlier, wouldn't pass constitutional muster under the arbitrary and capricious standard because it's subject to and the report that Keith provided sort of indicates that there's a lot of different circumstances where this could adversely impact the property owner and might be applied differently in order to avoid that adverse impact, which means then that it's somewhat arbitrary and capricious. I'm not suggesting that that's staff's application of it, but that interpretation leads me to believe that if challenged, it won't sustain the challenge. It won't prevail on the challenge. But again, getting back to that, I think when you look at this, we are different in terms of that, even in light of the interpretation, because we're holding back town property and not holding our property back off the town piece. So I think you can approve it, and I don't think that approving my interpretation of this in light of Section 2 is problematic.
Boy, I wish I'd known you could have just sloped the property, because that's what I would have said in the very beginning. Okay.
Without getting into constitutional issues, I think as a practical matter, I agree that the wall is not an eyesore, and B, is necessary to hold Mason's Island Road up. And I wonder if we can't go ahead with this application and then get right to work on retaining walls and get some more specific rules in place that would allow this sort of thing without allowing somebody to build a 12-foot wall in their neighbor's view.
You know, I feel that this would be an example of where we would want to go to the town attorney for an opinion before the board made a decision. And that's totally acceptable. For the commission to take that stance, I understand the applicant, you know, wants to move forward. But I think it might be wiser to talk to the town attorney. I agree with you, Fred. Maybe the town attorney would say, yeah, but we really need to put some clarity around this. And, you know, once again, that would give clout to focusing on it. But it's totally acceptable to go to the town attorney and ask these questions before we move forward with the application.
Keith, this is Ryan. Just a question out of curiosity. If we wanted to move forward with approving the application, as part of that, could we specifically stipulate that we're approving it within a very, lack of a better word, strict or open interpretation of that, where we could make it very specific? We're only approving it in this instance, given the way that the retaining wall is rather different than what we normally conceived of when the original thing was written. Does that make sense?
We could have a stipulation in there that sort of clarifies the commission's intent. You know, something like this retaining wall of over 3 feet is being approved because it is sloping away from the road, or something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
I would suggest we do that because this property has been in this stage for 10 or 12 years now, and I think it's time to move ahead with it. And I think that if we need to fix how we define a retaining wall and whether it's visible to the rest of the neighborhood or not, we should do that. But going to the town attorney is going to take months. And I'm not sure why we would do that. Let's just make this approval specific to this application and then work on it. And I have a question for Ryan. Who's Bertha? Who is Bertha?
Bertha? Oh, Bertha's Muscles, Baltimore.
Okay.
Keith, do you have anything else to add? Keith?
Yes.
You have anything else to add, Keith?
Well, before the hearing's closed, I wanted to bring up the recommended stipulations of the approval that were on page 23 of the report. Particularly because once the hearing's closed, the applicants won't get to comment on them. There were 6 in there that were in the report that I probably won't read through all of them here. But we might want to add a number 7, the retaining wall.
What page?
23. Might want to add stipulation number 7 that the retaining wall shall be a stone veneer, as stated by the applicant. Also a number 8, that the fence along Mason's Island Road shall be a black wrought iron fence or similar material. And we were talking about a number 9, that the retaining wall of over 3 feet is approved in the setback. The rest of the words there, but basically because it's sloping away from Mason's Island Road.
Can you just say that the retaining wall should not be visible to the neighbors? Will that do it?
It could. Although technically, it's visible from the YMCA, which is a neighbor, but it's not visible from the across the street neighbors on Mason's Island Road.
They're going to have to look around the building to see it. I think we're, you know, we're getting really picky there.
You know what Mr. Deasy was talking about was some sort of explanation of as to why this is approved. Something like the retaining wall of over 3 feet is approved in the building setback due to the fact that it's not visible from Mason's Island Road.
Yeah.
And it's retaining the town road.
Yeah.
Sure.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair or Keith, could I, before you get done with your stipulations, could I just add a couple requests?
Go right ahead, Ryan.
This is Sergio for the applicant. No worries. We're bouncing around here. So we just had a couple of clarifications that we wanted to make sure that were either added or included in the stipulations. One of which is that we are getting a special use permit for a combination of medical office and for professional offices. We would respectfully request that should the percentage of square footage change between the two types of offices, that could get an administrative approval. And for instance, if we went for a full medical office, as long as we meet all the criteria required for that, for the zoning, that could be administratively approved, and vice versa. If it'll give my client a little bit more flexibility with the economies of putting tenancy in this building. If that could be in consideration for a stipulation, would be appreciated. And also, just I would like to put in there, if possible, that we still have to go back to ledge light for a construction permit. So we would also request that there be a stipulation that the final septic plan be contingent upon ledge light approval. That's all I have, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, does the alternates have any questions? Any further questions?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
How about a second?
Second the motion. This is
Second,
Ben.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing closed. I don't have my gavel. Do I hear a motion?
Bang your iced teacup.
I will. Do I hear a motion on this app? We're gonna discuss this application. Do I hear a motion on this application?
Make a motion to approve with the stipulations as outlined by Keith and Sergio.
So
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
if I can back up here, we have a few things. There's the decision on the waivers requested, a decision on the coastal area management application, and a decision on the special use permit itself.
There's 3 different decisions.
Right.
Any discussion on the motion?
Well, which one are we
It's
voting on exactly?
We're going on the first one, then we'll go to the second one.
so I'm not sure what the motion.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the motion was made.
To
I'm
approve
not sure
it with
what
the
motion was made.
stipulation.
Okay, I made a motion to approve the application with the 8 or 9, I guess it's 9 now, stipulations between what was in the write-up for the meeting and the ones that you just added. If we're going to go back to do a couple of other things in the meantime, we need to do that first, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess I'd recommend
You're making a motion for the special use permit only, not anything else, correct?
Right.
Well, I guess I recommend withdrawing the motion and maybe starting with the waivers requested. Those
Withdrawn.
are sort of a prerequisite to the special use permit.
Okay, the motion is withdrawn.
Do I hear a motion on the waivers requested?
Make a motion to approve the waivers requested.
Do I hear a
Second.
second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll hold you.
And-
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it. Number 2. Motion on the CAM.
And the what?
Motion to approve the CAM as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Now, a motion on the special use permit.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the special use permit with the stipulations that were included in the notice and the stipulations that are articulated by Keith.
Do I hear a second?
These would include Sergio's as well, the applicants.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and Sergio, yes.
A total of 11 stipulations.
Okay, I had 9, but okay, 11.
Yeah. Do I hear a second?
Second the motion, but I'd like to get clear on the ones after Keith's report, Sergio's and our fence one.
Sure. Number 7 was retaining wall shall be a stone veneer. Number 8 was the fence along Mason's Island Road shall be black wrought iron fence or similar material. 9 was retaining wall of over 3 feet is approved in the setback due to the fact that it is not visible from Mason's Island Road and is retaining the town road. Number 10 was change in interior space between medical and general office may be administratively approved so long as parking and other requirements are met. And number 11 was final septic plan shall be subject to ledge light health district approval.
Okay, and do we need to say anything about signage now or trust that they will come back for signage at a later date?
I would add it if you want to see the sign, because usually signs don't have to come back before you.
We'd like to see them.
Okay.
And that should be another stipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So number 12 can be, and would you like to see a wall sign back before you, or are you only thinking about the detached sign?
All signage.
Okay.
But that would just be administrative review, but we'll come before us, an administrative review.
Right.
Right.
Not a public
The
hearing.
sign shall be
right.
Approved by the commission. That is number 12.
Keith, can we make another stipulation that if if this property comes before planning and zoning for another special use permit, change in use permit, that the loading dock is reviewed at that time?
Why would that be necessary? If it's a new special use, we get to start over, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, because I've never seen a new special use permit brought forward before the board where they're just changing something where it goes into the detail of, oh, remember the loading dock is 50, it doesn't meet our town specifications. I've never seen that. So I'm not worried about it for this particular application, but I am worried that in the future, that could be an issue.
No, I understand. We generally do a pretty good job of tracking the history of these properties.
We can put it in. There's no, won't do any harm.
Yeah, it would be something like, should a new special use permit be required for a new use, the commission shall review the adequacy of the loading zone.
Perfect.
Okay, question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Question though, Keith, is 12 years from now, who's going to remember? Is that going to be flagged in the record somehow?
Yeah, it would be something where it would just be up to us to look at the past approvals and see if there's anything relevant.
What's your retirement date?
Good question.
Okay.
Do I have anyone who wants to amend the motion?
If I can do it without getting into all the details, I will amend it with all 12 or 13.
13 together.
13 stipulations as we have just discussed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passed. You want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
What?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and all the members. Appreciate you entertaining us.
It worked out well. Thank you.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Take a 5-minute break.
Yes, sir.
Do administrative review.
Oh, sure. It's item 4A, the administrative review items. 4A1 is PZ 1927 SD, Odia Adams and Patrick Marshall. Request 90-day extension of to file the final plans for a previously approved subdivision. This was approved by the commission in December. State statutes say that these normally have to be recorded within 90 days, or they can get up to 2 90-day extensions from the commission. It often takes a lot of time to record these plans because of the requirements involved, like getting the Board of Selectmen to approve the open space, and of course, everything's been held up with the current pandemic.
Is that the old Mystic one? Keith,
Yeah.
The old Mystic.
Right. Now, since we put this on the agenda, it's not even really necessary because there's a new executive order from the governor's office that prevents land use approvals from expiring during all this. But it wouldn't hurt to vote on it anyway, just to give them that extension to file the Mylars.
Make a motion to approve the 90-day extension, if not superseded by the states.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And item 2 is 20044 ZON, Latazori Development, Coldwell Banker. Zoning permit application for change of use from financial to office and associated signs. 80 Stonington Road, Mystic, Assessors Map 153, Block 3, Lot 1, Zone GC60. This is just a change of use from financial services to general office, which is Caldwell Banker Real Estate, in an existing commercial building. The signage is just to replace the existing. It conforms to all the bulk and use requirements and the parking requirements in the GC60 zone.
Is this across from Big Y?
Yes.
Yeah, it is that building.
Any discussion? Or hear a
Make a-
motion?
Make a motion to approve as stipulated, as read.
Or hear a
Second.
second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And item 3 is 2065 ZON Capalbo, Stonington Realty LLC. Zoning permit application for a change of use from personal services to retail restaurant and associated sign. This is at 37 South Broad Street, Pawcatuck, Assessors Map 14, Block 1, Lot 4, Zone GC60. Another change of use in an existing commercial building, conforms to the GC60 bulk and use requirements and parking. The building official's comment said that the proposed floor plan might need some revisions for ADA compliance, but those can be addressed at the building permit level because we don't really enforce that. So just, recommend approval with the stipulation that proposed improvements shall conform to relevant ADA requirements.
Is that,
Hey, Keith, on this one, the link in the report, it required a password.
I talked to Gail about that, and she had to go in through her agenda. It worked much easier.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I
there was
didn't
some
have
experience.
that issue with any of the other links in the report, just that one link.
Yeah, it worked
Okay.
Friday for her, and it didn't work for me Sunday. So she straightened it away.
Okay.
This is
Yeah, there
a,
was something changed with that.
this the poultry shopping center?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It is. It's just a juice, sort of like a juice bar going into what used to be the smoke shop there.
Oh. Do I hear a motion on this application?
I make a motion to approve the application.
Do I hear a second?
I will second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Keith.
So number 4 there is the commission consideration of a temporary policy regarding zoning enforcement and permitting during the COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, as the economy starts to reopen, we felt it necessary to create this policy about outdoor seating and some other issues as we grapple with this. Our restaurants and other businesses have been through difficult times here, and as they're set to reopen, they're going to be continuing to struggle. Per the state's rules, come May 20th, restaurants will be able to have outdoor seating only at 50% of the normal capacity, have to meet stringent social distancing and other guidelines. So,
What was that?
Arlene came on.
some restaurants, might choose to stay closed. Some might still do takeout early. But we came up with this policy in order to not have zoning be the impediment to the restaurants coming back. Because normally if a restaurant wants to have outdoor seating, they have to go back to the commission, get the modification of their approval. With the meetings we're having every few weeks, there's no way this could happen by May 20th for all the restaurants out there. We didn't want zoning to be the reason that local restaurants don't get back on their feet. Basically, this policy formalizes our looking the other way with zoning, and so businesses can operate at their normal capacity and try to get going again. It would allow outdoor seating to be done without permits temporarily, or a trip to the commission. There's tons of restaurants in town, from big to small, fancy to casual, and to have all of those go before the commission to just try to have some outdoor seating would be impossible. So this policy addresses more than that too. There's 4 types of relief that it has for businesses. And keep in mind, this is a temporary policy. The first one is signage, that the department won't enforce the use of temporary signage for the following circumstances, and it lists a bunch of circumstances there. Basically, it allows banners, A-frame signs, as long as they don't cause certain problems that are spelled out here, like blocking visibility, blocking ADA access. Still doesn't allow the annoying type of signs like inflatables and flashing lights and things like that. But and this applies to more than restaurants, because a lot of other businesses are trying to communicate to the public that they're going to be open. The other thing is the outdoor seating for restaurants that I mentioned. This was shopped around to different departments in town, such as the police and the fire districts, which added some comments there. Some of the same rules there, can't interfere with pedestrian travel, sight lines, ADA accessibility. It does have a time limit. Hours for the outdoor seating can't be beyond 9 p.m. on weekdays, 10 p.m. on weekends. All noise ordinances have to continue to be met. Now, if a restaurant does serve liquor and they're looking to do this, they still have to get a patio permit from the State Liquor Commission. They still have to go through that. And keep in mind that all these things only allow what we can allow, which is zoning. It doesn't change any of the rules for health or ADA accessibility, fire code, any of the other many rules that restaurants have to abide by. Another thing that this would allow is temporary outdoor retail displays for retail businesses that are struggling to get back on their feet and communicate that they are open. And the other thing is changes of use in existing commercial buildings, such as the 2 we just approved, that temporarily the commission can authorize the zoning official to issue zoning permits for certain changes of use, like the past 2, in existing commercial buildings that are allowed in the zoning district without needing a special use permit, and that don't allow new construction, building additions, significant exterior modifications. These can still be referred to the commission if there's an interpretation question. And again, that doesn't modify any requirements or anything else like building, health, or fire. Now, out of all of these, this one is sort of just to streamline the process for businesses out there and to lighten the load on the commission's agendas as we do these virtual meetings for however long we're going to have to do this. So that one isn't so directly related to COVID-19. It's just something that can help some businesses out there and help with the commission's agendas also.
Okay, 2 questions for you, Keith. How does this get shut off when the time comes? How do we go back to life as we knew it? Well, the other question is, could we, as a commission, could we just be informed as these things are approved by the department?
Sure. As far as the first question, it's written up as being in place until September 7th, which is Labor Day, or until relevant social distancing and operational requirements for businesses have been lifted by the state of Connecticut, whichever is earlier. And that these temporary policies can be modified or further extended by the vote of the commission. So if it turns out that it is leading to some sort of problem, it can be revisited and will have to be revisited by September 7th, even if nothing changes.
That works.
I have a question. Are porta-johns allowed out in the parking lot? Because I think they might want to be to keep people from going in and out of the building.
I'm sorry, is what
I
is
guess,
allowed in the parking lot?
A porta-john, a porta-potty.
Oh my God, no.
I don't know. Why not?
You know, I don't know, and I don't know what the rules are, if they would need them, or if people can just go in and use the bathroom there.
Keith, I have a question. Is this a governor's order, or are we actually, I mean, is the governor giving us discretion to adopt this? Are we voting on something?
Well, it would be voting on this. The state hasn't really issued something like that. So it's sort of why we need to do it. Because the state could say that zoning rules temporarily don't apply for this stuff. Restaurants can just have outdoor seating. They haven't done that, which sort of leads us to have to come up with something like this that just sort of formalizes our looking the other way and not requiring permits for this stuff.
I'm for it.
I'm for it too. Anything you can do to help.
Yeah.
No porta potties, please.
I have one thought on it. It says the restaurants between 9 and 10. Well, you can't, if someone orders a meal at 10 minutes at 9, you got to have time to finish it. So I think we should put in there, no orders should be served after 9 or after 10, but people can finish their meals. We don't want to have them kicked out at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock.
Good idea.
So
in Rhode Island, they're doing it a little different. The governor over there says all outdoor seating, you have to have a reservation before you can come. Well, I don't think we need to go that far at this time.
Agreed.
So I have several thoughts on this. So I actually I think the comment about the porta potty is really a great comment, and there should be something, either you can or you cannot have that. I don't know what people think, but I think that I have 4 other thoughts. I'm confused about the retail and what they're allowed to do. So, Keith, I'm thinking of, are they allowed to like put out a rack of clothes on the sidewalk? Is that what you mean? Or are you thinking that they're allowed, like a car dealership, to put that blow up thing that, goes up and down, up and down, up and down, that obnoxious thing? What is that? What are you thinking?
It is retail displays of merchandise, so I should probably write in there of merchandise and not some crazy sign or something like that. But that's the idea. It's more of the rack of clothes.
Okay, and that's the same when you said the signage and you specifically say non-inflatable. So that does that mean like all those blow up things that people have, or those moving objects are not part of they're not supposed to have those, like the flag, those open sign that are like flags and whatnot?
Open signs are okay under a certain size in our regulations. Our regulations don't allow for the inflatable things, or the guy that moves his arms up and down. I'm sort of tempted to do that movement right now during the meeting, but I won't.
Okay. So then the other question I had, let's say we'll take a restaurant like Bravo Bravo, where they have a bar and they have a restaurant. Now, my understanding of the policy that's being proposed is that they couldn't, let's say their entire inside seating area, including the bar, is 100 people. Let's just put that out there. They couldn't switch it up so that, I don't know, 90 people are all 100 are in the parking lot, or all somehow that it's over 100 people, like the combination of what's allowed by the state inside as well as the combination of what's in their parking lot or on their sidewalk cannot extend past that 100, right?
Yeah, the state's rules say that if a restaurant has normal capacity of 100 seats, they're only allowed now to have outdoor seating of up to 50%. So they could only have 50 seats outside with no bar for now.
Okay. All right.
You know, and I think the state will loosen this stuff in different stages.
Okay. And then my other two comments are this, which are probably different from other members. I think the 9 and 10 o'clock, you know, I have to be honest with you, 10 o'clock is late. Some of these restaurants are right next to homes. And I certainly don't think it should be 10 o'clock serve. If it has to be 10 o'clock, it should be shut down. And I think that going all the way to September, I think it should be a more measured approach that we allow this for 2 months, and then we at least, you know, say this will be a topic in our July meeting as to whether we want to extend this out for another 2 months. I just don't think that we should say unilaterally this is September. This is a big change. Yes, we want to stimulate business, but we've got neighborhoods, we've got people living there, and we already have, you know, people within the neighborhoods of downtown Mystic that have concerns about the traffic, about the parking, you know, and you know, it's 4 months of their lives that they're being inconvenienced. So I just think we should have a measured approach and say this is good for 2 months, and we'll reevaluate. Because right now the reevaluations that are in the policy are like, you know, you would step in and negotiate between two people or two businesses or something, and I think it needs to be a little bit more measured than that. I mean, think about it. If you had 50 people in the parking lot of Bravo, where all those people are going to park? Where are they going to go? They're going to go right down into the neighborhoods that people, you know, summer people come, children are out at night playing, etc. I just think we have to be a little bit more measured.
A question here: Does this allow people to expand their outdoor seating?
It does temporarily.
It does.
Yeah.
They can't have more seats than they already have, though.
Okay.
They can have more outside, but they can't have more in general.
Not inside.
Right.
There's no inside seating.
No inside. Well, yeah. I guess I agree then with Lynn that we ought to bring it back to so it's not all summer, and review it again in July or whenever, because you don't want Bravo's seating to be outside all summer long if it's not necessary.
Yeah, the way it's worded, it does say September 7th or until these rules go away from the state, and then things would snap back to normal. But yeah, it could be revisited at an earlier date.
Well,
yeah, because I think, you know, I mean, really think about it. You got 100 people sitting in Bravo parking lot, right? And where are those cars going to park? Where are they parking? There's no parking.
50%.
So they're going to go down every single side street.
50% of capacity can only be outside.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right, I'm going to dissent a little bit with my colleagues here. I think we've got to do everything we can to help our local businesses, because
I agree.
Yeah, it might be inconvenient for them for this summer, But here's the alternative. If they go out of business, it's going to be a lot of summers before there are any businesses that come back. So, yeah, it might be a little more traffic or the businesses stay open a little bit later, but I really think that this is an extraordinary time, and we've got to do everything we can to support them.
Amen to that, brother.
I think we got to go to September. We'd only have one meeting in July. And Lord knows what's going to come up on our agenda between now and then. Can we repeal it, Keith?
Well, if it's working, then it should be a quick
I know,
discussion live.
But if they're planning something, all of a sudden on the second Wednesday of July, it says, oh, you can't do that anymore. I don't think it's fair to the restaurant, to the merchant.
I think I agree too. I mean, these are difficult economic times, no BS. And if we can do something to help these businesses stay in business, so when this is over, we aren't looking at a lot of empty stores and restaurants, I think we should do it. I don't think the town is going to die because 100 people are sitting in a parking lot. They'll get over it.
I don't think you can have as much traffic in downtown Mystic as we've had in the past 2 years.
I
I agree with everybody who's expressed an opinion to try to work with the businesses. This is an industry that has been so adversely impacted that it could become extinct. And unless you take, a concerted measure like has been proposed, getting into the minutia of an application is going to put these places out of business permanently. And I don't disagree that there aren't going to be situations that arise, but those situations are going to have to be worked out on a one-on-one basis. I think the leniency is called for and it's appropriate.
I make a motion to approve the 4 stipulations.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those, we'll poll it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Ayes have it. I'm an aye.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Remember, we have a meeting, another meeting this month in 2 weeks.
2 weeks from tonight?
2 weeks from tonight.
That's right.
You'll be sending stuff out though, right, Keith?
Yeah.
Right. I'll send out the,
Tuesday.
yeah.
So I'll just, when I see that, I'll know it then.
Right. And the agenda also, will have all the information for anybody else who wants to join, any other member of the public, of course.
What do we have next meeting, Keith?
It'll be the public hearing for the 3-lot subdivision on Oakwood Avenue.
That's the only one public hearing.
That's the only hearing. Oh, actually, and for the, there's another one for a special use permit for a liquor store at the former Avanti's restaurant.
They're moving across the street.
Yeah, moving across the street.
Keith, did you see the message that popped up from Angela?
I did not. Let's see.
Yeah. It's in the WebEx chat.
Where was it? I don't see it.
You click on a little thing that's glowing at the bottom.
It's got a red dot on it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hi, this is Angela. I'm opening up use with limited seating of 8, but have the ability for outdoor seating to increase seating capacity outside to 8 to 12 outside and 8 inside. Because you're approved with only up to 8, it's got to stick with just 8 for zoning. If you go more than 8, you have to apply for a special use permit to be a restaurant according to our regs. instead of being a retail restaurant. Looks like there's a new executive order 7MM allows what we just approved. All right, so we'll have to check in with the governor's new executive order, which might have just approved what we just approved. So
We did it.
Step ahead.
thanks for the update, Angela.
Keith, would you go through again the next meeting? We're talking about Avanti's moving.
No.
One on,
Oh. The Blue Whale
so-
Liquor Store moving to Avanti's.
Right.
Blue Whale Liquor.
We
Oh.
used to be the Blue Whale.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
The Windjammer.
Oh,
Windjammer, yeah. And Avanti's closing up?
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And they're going to take over the entire building, the Avanti building?
Right. Yeah, moving
it's
across
pretty
the street to the
liquor
market
store.
building.
I make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
wait a second.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Keith, for putting this all together. And Gail,
Thank
the whole
Thank you.
staff.
Great job.